Hi, good evening, everyone. Thank you for staying back to the last couple of sessions of the day. And we'll try and keep this short and crisp because I'm assuming that everyone has their after party to go to after soon. I'm Medha Srivastava, General Counsel at Hashed, and I'll be moderating this panel discussion on crypto regulations in Southeast Asia. And I have my co-panelists Angela and Chee Keong with me. May I request both of you to introduce yourselves, please?
Thanks, Medha. Thanks for having me here, and super excited to dive into this. I'm Angela Ang, Senior Policy Advisor with TRM Labs. We are a blockchain analytics company that provides a platform for our clients to detect and fight fraud and financial crime on the blockchain. And prior to joining, so I lead Asia Pacific Public Policy and Government Relations for TRM Labs. And prior to this, I was a regulator at the Monetary Authority of Singapore for 13 years. And most recently, I was part of the team that was pioneering the payments and crypto regulatory regime in Singapore. So I was overseeing licensing of payments and crypto service providers in Singapore.
Hi everyone, my name is Chee Keong. So I'm the associate partner from EY, Ernst & Young. I'm based in Singapore, but we cover the APAC blockchain digital asset team. We have a Center of Excellence team in Singapore. So we support all our engagement within APAC with clients that host digital assets. And we provide technical evaluation tools as well as all kinds of supports.
Wonderful. Thank you both of you for being here. So I'm going to start my first question with, and this is to both of you, that we have been seeing Southeast Asia has been witnessing significant crypto adoption, and startups in Southeast Asia have seen, and this is a figure that I was reading in a report, more than $1 billion of investments flowing in 2023. So how do you anticipate regulatory trends evolving to accommodate this growing market, which will also balance investor protection and financial stability?
Thanks, Medha. So maybe I can take a stab at that. I actually think that a lot of the regulatory action that's happening in APAC is really, like you said, and the title of this panel implies, moving in that direction that is crypto friendly. But I would like to borrow a line from a very good friend of mine, Emily Parker. She said that she wrote a piece for CoinDesk saying crypto friendly does not mean crypto easy. You know, it means what we are looking for is clarity. So perhaps crypto friendly actually means crypto clear, and I think that's where regulation in Asia is headed towards, right? We see a lot of regulatory clarity. Regulators are actively engaging with the industry to kind of educate themselves on the technology, which is important, and then also kind of socialize regulatory expectations. It's not just like, bam, these are the rules and go, but they want people to know exactly what the expectations are and how to comply. And I like to think of this clarity, how achieving this clarity as part of 3 C's. The other 2 being collaboration and calibration. So collaboration is very important. That feedback loop is very important because crypto is such a fast-moving space and you really need to be talking to the industry that's really at the coalface of this innovation in order to understand what the risks are and what are the best, technical tools to manage them. And then the other part of it is calibration, because it is so fast-moving that you not only need to have that feedback loop, you need to be nimble to be able to adjust your regulation. And that's as with developments in the industry. For example, when we first conceptualized the Payment Services Act in Singapore, really DeFi, stablecoins, I mean, this was all the way back in 2016. It was just starting to emerge. Yeah, and so we were like, oh, okay, so stablecoins, is this e-money or is this a digital payment token like other cryptocurrencies? So these are evolving conversations, and you need to have a framework that's able to accommodate these developments. And the next one, I think the big question to answer for regulators will be DeFi. So clarity, collaboration, and calibration.
Right. Chee Keong, your thoughts on this?
Yeah, sure. I definitely agree with Angela about the clarity part. And I also think that the regulators, they are also, like I said, need to educate themselves, update with their technologies. And I think there are starting to differentiate the kind of policies that they give out. So you can see that crypto or blockchains is not all the same. There's stable coins, there is crypto, there is real world asset tokenization. So there's many different classes of digital assets, and you can't apply the same rules and regulation for all digital assets. So I think the regulator starts to realize that, and then they go by the same activity, same rules, or same kind of risk kind of approach, which I think is good. And I think the other aspect is also on how they can protect investors in terms of risk. So of course, the investor protection is still on the top of their mind. This will still be ongoing. Same for AML, anti-money laundering, counter financial terrorism. This will still be on the top of their mind. So these are still priorities for them going forward.
Right. I think taking up on the 3 C's that you mentioned, Angela, which is clarity. Singapore is often regarded as one of the most clear crypto-related regulatory framework that they have. And with the recent amendments and changes to the PS Act also, it seems as if they are trying to move forward in a way where they create a more stable environment for crypto-related companies. Now, would you agree that that is the case? Do you think not crypto easy, but crypto-friendly regulations would lead to more stability for the Web3 industry in general? And what lessons do you think other Southeast Asian countries can learn from Singapore?
Thanks, Medha. I definitely think that clarity is so important in terms of supporting innovation because, we talk about the word compliance, right? But in order to comply, you need to know what the standard is that you are supposed to be complying to. If you're existing in a regulatory vacuum where you don't know what the rules are, you don't know what the expectations are, there's a lot of uncertainty. And then you're kind of like also waiting for the shoe to drop, right? Like, will they one day decide that I should be regulated? Is the way that I've implemented the controls, in line with what the regulator is expecting? And that's where I think, MAS, Singapore has done really well in terms of maintaining that feedback loop with the industry. And I was once talking with a regulator from MAS, and she said, I find it so important to speak with the industry, and it's so helpful for me because in this space, I don't know what I don't know. And it's very dangerous to be making rules about something that you don't know. So there is that willingness to understand, there is that willingness to learn, that I think really I really hope to see in more jurisdictions. And I think we do see that in many other jurisdictions in Asia. And I also want to kind of double click on a point that Keong raised around this concept of same risk, same activity, same regulation, which was a mantra that was from the Financial Stability Board in terms of, the regulatory expectations towards crypto, which is true. But then, the tech stack of traditional finance and crypto blockchain is fundamentally different, right? How do you do identity verification in a crypto environment versus in a traditional finance environment? Is very, with a bank account, it's very different. Wallet verification of the ownership of a wallet is a completely different process than due diligence on an individual that's opening a bank account. So these are very important technical differences that I think it's very important for regulators to understand, and I really do see an effort here in Singapore and many other countries in Hong Kong and even here in Thailand to really understand these differences and to kind of make account for that in the way that they develop the framework.
Right. Chee Keong, one of the things that I'd like to ask you is, since you have been working with digital assets companies in the APAC region, different Southeast Asian countries have their regulations at different levels, right? There's some like Singapore is a lot ahead, maybe. Hong Kong has very comprehensive sets, and they have recently been coming up more and more with digital assets regulations. So how do you think this divergence in the level of regulations across this region, how would it impact the development and the attractiveness of each country's crypto ecosystem? And does it impact the interoperability between these jurisdictions? Because most Web3 companies are They may be incorporated somewhere, but they operate on a more global level than other traditional financial institutions.
Yeah, so of course, different countries, within South Asia, there's different regulations, and therefore, since I'm covering APAC, right, we can see, all these Web3 companies or even traditional financial institutions, they will know where they are, where they want to go. Or in fact, sometimes we even provide, as EY, we even provide consultancy, advising our clients on where should you set up your headquarters, where should you set up, which license is best for your particular business model. So yeah, that's because different countries have different regulations, and setting up a business, whether it's crypto or digital assets, right? Unfortunately, there will be regulatory arbitrage, I would say. Yeah, so firms, they will choose whichever that works best for them, whichever country, whichever jurisdiction that works best for them. And that's why you can see, like in Singapore, there's a lot more activities going on. You can see in Thailand as well, but not so in some other countries. Yeah, so the firms, they will know where to go, whatever that suits their business. Yeah.
And I would say this is actually not just a regional problem, but it's a global problem. And there are many, the standard setting bodies like FSB, IOSCO, they have called out, crypto is really borderless. It's not something that you can cage within your national borders and then forced to comply with your rules when there are maybe more conducive frameworks elsewhere. And so there's been a lot of, I think, international standard setting work in the last year or so, policy recommendations coming out from FSB, IOSCO on crypto assets, stable coins, DeFi, to kind of bring this alignment. I think there's a recognition that it's very important, especially important in crypto, to have some level of alignment. And let's be real, right? Different countries are always going to have different philosophies. They're going to have different attitudes towards blockchain and cryptocurrency. They're going to have different regulatory philosophies. They're going to have different priorities. But at least some minimum level of alignment, setting a minimum standard in terms of crypto regulation on a global level is going to be very important, I think, in fostering a good culture of risk management and governance in the industry.
No, I completely agree with that, Angela. I think the collaboration is required not just between the regulator and the industry, but also amongst different regulators, because otherwise this sort of inconsistency in regulation will impact the business and lead to regulatory arbitrage, like you mentioned. Chee, Keong, I would also like to ask you that there are countries in Southeast Asia that have set up regulatory sandboxes. Given your experience in consulting with clients in this sector, how effective have these sandboxes been?
I think the sandbox is a very good idea because it's like a courtship, between a couple, dating. I think of the sandbox, as a dating between but this time it's not between you and your partner, but it's between the regulator and the startups, right? So for the regulators, they can find out more about the fintechs, what they are doing, and at the same time, they learn the newer technology, the know-how, which will then influence them in making policy decisions later. And on the other side, for the startups, right, they also understand what the regulators are, what are the concerns, and how they can beef up in terms of their tech risk management, their internal controls, their governance. So I think it's a win-win for both. And yeah, so for startups that are not very clear on their regulatory requirements, the sandbox is the way to go. But if you think that you have the team, you have the capabilities, the knowledge, to go for full licensing, then and it might be faster. If you skip the sandbox, then just go for it. So it depends very much on the company itself. Yeah.
Right. Angela, given that we were just discussing about global harmonization, how different has the work of TRM Labs has been in Southeast Asia when you compare it to the US and the EU? Do you think, of course, EU has come up with MiCA and will be implementing it, but US has seen a lot of upheaval on the regulatory side. So do you think a clear regulatory approach will lead to better industry development in this region?
Yeah, 100%. Clarity is so important. And I wanted to go back to the first part of your question, right, which is how differently is TRM Labs working with companies and regulators in APAC versus in the US. And actually, because crypto is so global and so borderless, it's really not all that different. Just to go back and explain a little bit about what TRM Labs does, I like to call us Google Maps for the blockchain. Basically, we help our clients to take these public blockchain data and then connect that to real world entities. So you can see that, okay, this blockchain wallet address is connected with a sanctioned individual, or this blockchain wallet address has been associated with a terrorist financing organization. And from there, then you can basically, if you're a crypto business, keep those risks off your platform. If you're a regulator, you can understand the risk levels of your regulated entities, for example. And I think this is something that we are seeing across the globe, right? In terms of using public blockchain data to manage money laundering and countering the terrorism financing risks.
Chee, do you think public perception and acceptance of crypto and the blockchain technology in Southeast Asia has influenced regulatory acceptance and policy making?
Yes, definitely. The public acceptance is very important. I mean, at the end of the day, the government is voted by the people, right? So they need the support, right? So it's a political thing. So whenever you hear someone being scammed by crypto, or some people lose their money in crypto, or some exchanges collapse, right? Then they'll ask, hey, why didn't the regulator do anything, when something goes wrong, basically, right? So yeah, and that's where the regulator is focusing so much on consumer protection, right? And also recently we can see there is the ETF in US, right? And that encourages the regulators, because people are not aware, hey, there's this Bitcoin ETF that I can invest, and I don't have to dabble with wallets, the technology, how to create my own wallet, how to do the custody and all that. But that brings up another issue. So where do all these ETF, where do they custodize, right? They have to find a regulated custodian. And therefore, we can see like MAS recently, they announced they expand the scope of the DPT to include custodian as well. Yeah. So of course, yes, that's what I meant. All this does influence the regulators in terms of their approach in licensing.
To be fair, the inclusion of custody in the Payment Services Act was in the works before FTX happened. So just want to give MAS some credit for that.
In fact, I'd be interested in understanding more on how TRM Labs has worked in shaping the crypto regulations in Southeast Asia. Do you actively engage with the regulators, given the kind of work that you do in this industry? And what role do you anticipate playing going forward?
Thanks, Medha. So I think TRM, we work with clients both in the public sector, so those regulators, law enforcement agencies, as well as the private sector, crypto businesses, financial institutions who may be dealing with crypto clients and clients with a source of wealth in crypto, for example. So we have the advantage of seeing both sides. And on top of that, we are in the business of basically making sense of on-chain data. So we are also able to glean insights from what our analysis of on-chain patterns is telling us. For example, in terms of illicit activity trends, in terms of how the ecosystem is developing. So I think our role, in terms of engaging with regulators and industry is twofold. One is really to be able to, offer perspectives from both sides, and also secondly, to be able to offer perspectives based on our data and analysis.
And Chee Keong, you've been working with businesses in this sector. So do you also, as a matter of policy, engage with the regulators, talk to them? Tell us a bit about how different jurisdictions in Southeast Asia, how do different regulators look at the industry, and what do you anticipate their ask from the industry is in terms of keeping it all, growing and stable and keeping investor protection measures in place?
Yeah, so for us, I mean, we definitely always regularly engage with the regulator. For the case of MAS, we do submit our, MAS does a lot of consultation, and you give a lot of feedbacks, because we are in the industry, right? Our clients are all holding digital assets and all that. So we do give feedback to the regulators time to time. And yes, it is important. And in fact, sometimes we get the reverse. like the regulator would ask us what is the best way to do it, or in terms of performing due diligence as well. Yeah, before they give out the license, they'll ask one of the big four like EY, okay, can you perform due diligence checks on this entity before they give out the license? And that's where our global experience comes in, because we have, we are global, so we have done this. We may not have done it in this country, but we have experience in other countries doing similar regulatory aspects, so the compliance aspect as well. So that's how we can advise our clients as well as the feedback to the regulators. Yeah.
Sure. So my last question for today, and this is for both of you, would be, what are the key factors you think that will shape the long-term regulatory outlook for crypto in Southeast Asia? What are some of the trends that you foresee, and where do you think Southeast Asia will stand given this regulatory development when compared to the rest of the world, particularly EU and USA? How do you anticipate the difference unfolding?
Towards crypto winter, just kidding. I think, but I mean, just to be very real, I think FTX, has really accelerated the pace of crypto regulation around the world, and it has also influenced the direction of crypto regulation. For example, as Keong mentioned, that focus on consumer protection, on proper custody of customer assets. So I think that trend, that focus on consumer protection, is going to continue. The other thing that I think is that we want to watch is probably the question of DeFi, and the total value locked in DeFi actually just crossed the 100 billion mark. So the ecosystem is becoming more and more significant, and regulators are trying to figure out this animal that basically challenges the traditional regulatory paradigm, because they're used to dealing with centralized entities with board of directors. Anything goes wrong, I can hang any one of the directors, right? That construct doesn't exist in DeFi, and I think there's another question that we'll see regulators start to grapple with. And the third trend, I think, is this idea of alignment and a kind of convergence towards some level of consistency. It won't be 100% the same, across different jurisdictions, but I do see a lot of work going into creating some regulatory consistency across the world.
Yeah, I think unfortunately in the Southeast Asia market, it's quite fragmented. So different countries has different jurisdictions, unlike what we see in the US or Europe, where there's more consistency and there's more scale. So for startups or Web3 companies that want to launch in Southeast Asia, they have to deal with the different jurisdiction, unfortunately, different kind of regulation, and they are at different stage of maturity. Whereas if you were to launch it in the US or you were to launch it in some other bigger markets, there's a scale is there. So I think that is one of the considerations. In terms of trend, I think, of course, there's a lot of hype around AI, and I do feel that AI is something that can help the Web3 world in terms of the user experience, because a lot of us are still struggling on how to deal with wallets, custody and all that. So the Web3 would, the AI would provide a much more conducive experience. And the other trend that I see would be in terms of blockchain being more and more transparent and more back end, right? So that you don't even need to know that something is actually happening on the blockchain. Right, whatever it happens, is immutable. Right, you can prove it, you can verify it. But on the front, you could be still using your existing app, but back end is actually powered by blockchain. So that's what I will see in the long-term trend.
Thank you both. I think we are ending it well within time. Thank you for a very engaging session.
Thank you, Medha.
Yeah, it was a pleasure to moderate this panel.
Yeah, thank you for saving the tough questions for offstage.